Hey, this is Brother Jeff with eLearning Brothers. I'm going to talk to you about some of the different options and how these different interactions in Edge Animate are structured in case you do want to go into the code and you want to edit it a little bit. I at least want to give you an introduction to how you would even get started with that. So the first step is to go ahead and just download one of these interactions. You can either download the template file and start from a template, or you can download the project files. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and download the project files. Downloads a folder to my desktop here. Double click on it. I'm going to go into the .an file to open it up inside of Edge. Zoom out a little bit by hitting Control minus or Command minus. And now I'm going to go into my stage, and I'm just going to select anywhere outside of the normal stage area. Now when you do that, there's a little code brackets right next to the name of the properties here. So this is the name, what shows up when you preview it. If I hit preview, that's what shows up inside of the little preview there. But if I come and I click on this actions panel, there's a couple different actions that you can take inside of here. Let me just kind of minimize this a little bit. So there's two different tabs. There's a composition ready and a creation complete. And so it does a couple different things. So the first thing it sets up under the create complete is it actually sets up the sounds to the sounds that you're going to be using. So you'll notice in this interaction we have some sounds when you hover over different things or when you click on different things. Well, we have to load the sound in first of all. So we just basically take this one line of code inside of this sound setup interaction, or this sound setup function basically. And you can just copy that line of code and then you can paste it right below it. Now you have to establish the sounds within a sounds folder, and that's what we have here. And you can just place your sounds inside of there as well. Now if you use the click sound, so click.mp3, that's the file that we're pointing to here. You also have to have a .ogg file in order to have it play on Firefox or Chrome. Now, you can create an OGG file from Adobe Audition, or there's other applications that will create that file. And then the last thing is to establish an ID. Now, again, you just copy and paste this, and you can just replace it with whatever one you're using. But the ID comes into play when you're calling this from a different button or function or something like that. Now, you do that inside of any of these buttons. And so if I just go to, I'm going to unlock tab 1 right here. Then I'm going to click on tab 1 and just double click to get into it. And you'll notice on the top layer is our button triggers. This is where all the triggers for this button is. And so right next to that, or up on the top of the properties, is our brackets, and that just tells me there's some actions attached to this. And so I click on the actions panel, and you notice the first one is, we have different tabs here, but we have mouse enter, touch end, touch start, different things like that. But on the mouse enter, we do a simple call. Since we loaded it in our audio files, we just do a simple call using ec.sound.play and then the name of the ID. So we establish an ID name, and you can name it whatever you want, but we establish an ID name, and now we can call that at any time just by typing in the name of the ID right there. So whenever the mouse comes into it, it's going to play the hover sound. And whenever the mouse leaves, whenever the mouse clicks, so I'm just going to go to mouse down, we're going to play, or maybe it's mouse, you can click on the different tabs to see mouse up, okay. So on the mouse up is when we're going to play the click. So if you establish your own path to your own audio file, you can play audio as soon as you actually click on one of those buttons. And so you can put right here, let's say we had narration. And so we named the audio file that we loaded in. So after I loaded it in, I named it narration. Well, that's all I have to do right here is just add that one line of code. And now my narration audio file is going to play when button 1 is clicked, basically. You can even do that at the very beginning, have it play at the very beginning. But that's how you would establish it if you wanted to do that. Now the button is basically just jumping in different points of the timeline, up, over, and down, so you can also establish different things right there if you wanted to, or change the reflection right here as well. But I'm going to go back to the stage area, and I'm going to select on the, just kind of out in the open here so I can get back to the main properties and go back into my code. So and once I've established my audio, I can come into the composition ready. Now the composition ready does a couple things. The two variables that we recommend changing is either animate tabs equals true or number of tabs. So if you don't want the tabs to animate, let me hit Control Enter. You'll notice that the tabs kind of animate in at first. If you don't want that to happen, come back into just the stage area, go into the composition ready, change that to false. Change that to false, hit Command S or Control S, hit Control Enter after that, and now you can see that the buttons did not animate in. They just automatically appeared. So you just change that simple variable basically. Now the other option is number of tabs. Let me change this back to true. So let's say I change this to number of tabs. I'm really only going to be using 6. So I'm going to change to 6 here, and I don't have to worry about moving some of them off the stage. You can if you want, but I'm going to hit Control Enter, and now you can see only 6 options actually get scrolled in. So I can't click on the other ones. That means I don't have to worry about ever going to that content, but you can see that now I can only have to use 6. Now a couple other things that you can do that is a little bit more risky. That's why we have this line. Only adjust the code below if necessary. But you can see that we have the animate tabs function right here, and we're using green sock animation. Now the green sock animation, this is where we animated in from. We're using from. We're saying, okay, tab 1 in 0.5 seconds, we're going to animate your CSS value, which is the X value, from a -421 off the stage to on the stage, and then we can add an easing value as well there. Now you can change that, so if you wanted to animate from somewhere else, or you can animate it to something else, you can change this line of code, and that will adjust how it actually animates. If you go to greensock.com, you can see all the different options that you can add here. Now, the next function, I try to make it as simple as possible. I mean, this is probably not the most efficient way for the code, but it is the most easy way to read. So you can see that if number of tabs is equal to 1, then the display tab CSS will actually hide tabs 2 through 12, and it will only show tab 1. So, but if it's set to 12, it's not going to hide anything. Or if it's set to 11, it's only going to hide tab 12, basically. And that's all that code is. If you're familiar with the code, you can go in there and you can adjust it how you want. But that's really all that we're doing there, and you can adjust that. Now, at this point, the only other thing that we're doing is if you select without going into it, select on the tab or the actions panel here by clicking on the brackets. You can see that really all we're doing from here is navigating to the different tabs. And so if you wanted to add on another tab, you can add a new button, but then you would have to add a new tab area basically. And then we're playing the animation that's within the tab content area basically. So when you click on a button, it jumps to that point in the timeline, the tab area, and now this tab is visible. Now you hide things and show things by selecting the display. So if I go into the intro content area, you'll notice that up to this point, you see the little diagonal lines, up to this point, that display is visible. But now it's actually set, intro content area is set to be off. If I had it always on, it'd be visible throughout the entire thing, and it warns me about that once I've turned it off. So up to this point it's on, up to this point it's off, and that's how we're hiding different tab content areas. From this point it's on, from this point it's off. But as soon as it goes to tab 2, now only tab 2 is on, but once it gets to tab 3, tab 2 is off. So that's really the basics of the code inside of these interactions. The game ones will be more complicated, but these ones are not, they don't have a lot of complications to them. But I at least wanted to give you an introduction to it so you can go in and you can feel free to modify it in any way that you want.